Oh, hello, and welcome to Una at Home. My name is Michael Thompson, and today we're going to be taking you through our pairing of Una's chicken soup with Dvorak's American Sweet. Now, when you think about it, soup is essentially the folk music of the food world. Almost every culture has its own traditional recipe, dating back to a time where taking leftover ingredients and boiling them was a great strategy for feeding many with few ingredients. The music of Dvorak works very well with this folk element because he himself took native melodies from first Bohemia and then later the New World and infused it into his music. The American Sweet in particular brings to mind this very vivid depiction of farmland with just the lights are kind of going out. It's the end of the day, everything's very beautiful, and you see a lot of blues, a lot of purples, and it's very warm and comforting. We hope that you'll agree this tastes exactly like our soup, which I'm going to hand things off now to Hayden, and he's going to walk you through exactly how to make it step by step. Hopefully answering any questions that you have along the way, and just showing you that this is very simple, it's very fun, and you can totally make it at home. Afterwards, I'll be back to guide you through our pairing so you can get the most out of your Una experience. We hope that you enjoy, and I'll see you soon.
Hi everybody, I'm Hayden and I am one of the chefs and co-founders of Una, and welcome to Una at Home. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to make our version of a classic chicken soup. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is just season these chicken thighs. I've got 4 bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, and all I've done so far is pat them dry, which is a good thing to do to just get rid of any of the sort of chicken juice that's on there, and it'll help the salt stick nicer. And for this recipe, we're using chicken thighs that have the bone in and the skin on because we're going to be cooking them in the soup. And having that bone will sort of do double duty. It'll keep the chicken nice and flavorful, and it will also help flavor the base stock of the whole soup. So all you have to do is season both sides of these, and then just leave them off to the side to rest while we get the rest of the stuff going. So I just set those chicken thighs to the side, and now I'm going to prep the onions and garlic for the sort of charred, jammy, caramelized onion topping that we're going to be finishing the soup with. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut a large yellow onion into sort of like half moon shapes. So we're just going to take off the outer layer. And then for this dish, we're going to want to cut lengthwise, sort of this way. Instead of across into these ways, we want to go sort of along with the ridges of the onion. That's going to make for a more pliable thing. And you're just going to want to thinly slice. That's done. And now we're going to get some oil going in a Dutch oven and start the onion cooking process. So when I'm making soup, I like to use a really heavy pot, like a Dutch oven like this one, or if you don't have one of these, any kind of big pasta pot, whatever the heaviest pot you have is, use it. And I have some shallot oil from some other thing that I'm going to use, but you can just use olive oil, and you want about a 1/4 cup, so I'm going to supplement that with some normal olive oil. Into that, I'm going to put all of the onions. And this process is going to take a long time, not super long, but be patient with it. It'll take probably like 10 to 12 minutes for you to get the kind of color that you're looking for. And what I'm looking for when I'm doing this is for these onions to sort of slowly break down. I'm going to season them again at this step. Yeah, so we're just going to do this until we start to see the onions take on some nice color, get dark golden brown, and char a little bit around the edges. So next up, we're just going to peel and slice some garlic while those onions are going away. So you're just going to use the flat side of a heavy knife and just mash them like that, and they'll pop right out of their skins. For this recipe, I like to use about 6 garlic cloves. These ones, as you can see, are kind of small, so if you have big garlic cloves, use less, use your intuition. So we're just going to peel these up. So once you have all the cloves peeled, we're just going to thinly slice them, and this doesn't really need to be pretty because it's just going to go in with the onions and it'll all sort of break down. But you want to get them nice and small because you don't really want like a big mouthful of garlic. But just do a rough, sort of thinly sliced job on those guys, and that should do it. Garlic is prepped, and now we're just going to wait for the onions to finish cooking almost, and then we'll add the garlic in, cook them together a little bit, and that will be our onion topping done. So this is about the point that I want to take the onions to before I add the garlic. So you can see that it's taking on some nice golden brown color. It's getting a little crispy charred bits as well. And so at this point, I'm going to stop stirring for a minute, and we're going to add the garlic that I sliced earlier. All that, nice and garlicky in there. And then once the garlic is added, you're going to want to keep cooking it for an additional sort of 5-ish minutes, and you're going to want to get color on the garlic similarly, and the whole thing should get nice and dark. We really want like a nice golden color. Alright, so as you can see, it's been about 5 minutes and everything's nice and dark looking. The garlic is cooked through, the onions are looking and smelling really delicious. So we're going to take this out and put it in a bowl. You can't laugh.
Sorry.
Alright, so now at this point we're going to start actually making the soup itself. So we're going to add 4 cups of chicken stock, which is just 1 box. We're using store-bought stock today, but if you're like me and you have a lot of time on your hands, making stock is always a good idea. So you can use homemade stock. And then we're gonna add 2 cups of just water, tap water. And we're gonna add our chicken thighs. And if you don't have any stock, you can actually just use plain water because this chicken cooking in it is going to impart some good chicken flavor and fat and all the things that you want. But if you do use just water, just make sure to season it extra with salt and taste as you go, to make sure that it is delicious. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna add some red miso paste to it. And this is optional because I know not everybody has miso at home, but if you're considering it, I would highly recommend getting some miso and adding it. It adds some nice richness and body to the soup, as well as some salt, so that we will add less salt later and taste as you go. And you just wanna stir it in, and it can be a little bit thick at first, so while this is coming up to a simmer, just help your miso get incorporated fully into the soup. All right, so we just let this come up to a simmer. As you can see, it's bubbling away, and now we're gonna lower the temperature all the way down to basically as low as it goes, and this is when you'll start your timer, and you're gonna wanna cook these chicken thighs in the simmering soup for about 20 minutes until they're fully cooked through. So the chicken is just about cooked through, and so before we deal with that, we're just gonna prep some parsley. So I'm just gonna chop about 1/2 cup. Don't get out a measuring cup or anything like that. And it's okay to get some of the tender stems and stuff. You just don't want any of the really thick stems. And one thing you can do when you're chopping herbs is you can use the side of your knife to sort of gather everything up with your non-dominant hand and roll sort of into a loose bunch, which helps organize things like parsley, which tend to sort of get all over the place, and then you can slice through really easily and have sort of nicely chopped parsley. And give it one more, just a rough chop. With herbs, you really don't want to go over and over and over again and have sort of green juice on your board. You want to just sort of once through with a sharp knife to get some bits that will be pleasant to eat. All right, so the chicken has been simmering for about 20 minutes, 20 to 25. And then you're just gonna wanna remove it and put it on a cutting board, because we want to remove the bone and the skin and shred it up nicely for the final product. And so at this point, this is a great time to taste the soup that you've got working with, to see if it needs some salt. If it's a little bland, you can add salt, maybe a crack of pepper, do whatever feels right. I added the miso earlier, so it has some nice salty richness going on, so I think it's okay. So once we remove the chicken, Now is when we're gonna add our pasta. So for me, I'm using this stuff, Fragola. It's these little sort of pearl looking pasta guys. You can use orzo or any kind of small shape you like, whatever. And you're just gonna add it right into the soup and cook it until it's al dente. So I like to start with about 10 minutes maybe, and then we'll check and see where we're at. And you might need like 15 minutes max. And so while we're doing that, we're gonna let the chicken cool a little bit, shred it up, and then when this is done cooking, we're basically gonna be there. We'll add the chicken back in, a little parsley, a little lemon, and we'll be very close to being finished. All right, so while we're waiting for these chicken thighs to cool down and be a little bit easier to handle, we're gonna prep the final ingredient, which is a yogurt topping that we're gonna do. So I wanted to include this in the video because if you're like me, you're at grocery stores and they might not have exactly what you need at times like these. And so all I was able to find, instead of a normal sort of whole milk yogurt, which I would normally recommend, is something called Labna, which is a much thicker style of yogurt, and it's tangy and delicious, but it's not gonna, it's like too thick to drizzle nicely. So all you have to do is take something that's thick like this, take a couple of scoops of it, and just add a little bit of water, and then whisk it, and it will become whatever texture you desire. So, as you can see, my sister does not have a whisk, so we're just making do. I don't know where you're watching this video from. You might not have all the tools you need, but you just gotta do your best, like we are, and that's gonna give the final a little bit more complexity, a little brightness, a little bit something different than your average soup. All right, so it's been about 12 minutes. The pasta, you can see, have swollen up, and I tasted a few of them and they're nicely al dente. So I'm gonna add the chicken now that it's nicely shredded. And I'm gonna save a little bit of the parsley so that we can make it look pretty at the end. Because, as my grandfather always said, you eat with the eyes first. And I don't think he made that up, but he's the one I heard it from. So, now we're just gonna remove this from the heat. Turn off the stove is probably a good idea. Last thing we're gonna do is just take a half a lemon and use your hand to catch the seeds and just squeeze all the juice of about a half a lemon. It's a couple tablespoons maybe, just to brighten things up. That's pretty much it for this soup. We're gonna plate it up now. All right, so I just ladled out some of the soup into this bowl, and the last thing you're gonna do is just finish off everything with the topping. So you're gonna take a nice, generous scoop of yogurt and dollop it right in the middle. And then take a big clump of your delicious onion garlic mixture that you made earlier. And don't be shy, this stuff is gonna add some texture and some sweetness and some saltiness. It's gonna be really good. And then some of that parsley that you saved from before, all over. And a little cracked black pepper right in the middle. And that is Una's chicken soup. Thanks for joining us.
Hello again. Now that you're done with your soup, let's talk a little bit about how the food and music can come together. So the opening motive in Dvorak's American Suite is this very beautiful, almost bittersweet melody, which to us brings to mind the end of a day. Right, you're filled with a sense of fulfillment as you survey this vast landscape. Maybe it's a farm, maybe it's nature, that's totally up to you. And you can see in the sky the color is slowly fading. Right, you see some blues, purples, oranges, reds, whatever you hear, whatever you taste, that's totally up to you. But now you go inside, and it's time to eat some soup. Right, the soup matches very well, like we talked about earlier, with this folk element. And as you go outside and look at the sunset, we'd implore you to experience the weight of the broth, the way that the orzo feels slipping across your tongue. And for now, I'd leave the onions out of it, but you're obviously welcome to do whatever you'd like. But this is your time to explore the way that the soup makes you feel, where you're feeling warm, and personally, I really like to eat the soup because it feels like it's wrapping around you just like a good sunset does. At around 2 minutes, you're going to hear a very stark change in melody as we enter the B section. And just as the melody starts to explore a little bit, now is when I would explore the jammy onions. Now this is a crazy texture to put in a chicken soup, but we feel that it adds a whole new level to the flavor profile, not only of the soup, but also to the music. And this is what you're hearing right now, in a melody that's exploring and changing harmonically, and is just overall very different from that opening motive that we had. At this point, you can mess around with the parsley, see how the sour cream or the yogurt, whichever you chose, plays into the equation. And just as the melody is experimenting, we hope that you will experiment as well. Now, as that section dies down, we start to enter the end. And you can hear that melody come up again, but now you hear it differently because you've been through this transformation of the middle section. Just as tasting the chicken now would taste a little different because you've had these onions, you've had the yogurt, everything is changing. So at this point, finish your exploration and notice how, as kind of the last glimpses of color fade from the sky, you're really relying on this soup to keep you warm. We hope that you've enjoyed our pairing, and although we did it specifically for the first movement, the flavor profile that we built for you in the soup works for the rest of the movements as well. So totally explore them. If you're eating this with people, talk to them maybe about, oh, I had this orzo and it worked really well with the flutes, or this yogurt was crazy, this one section. The idea behind this experiment is that it's an exploration for you and the people that you're around to share. So once again, if you've enjoyed, please just drop us a quick note in the feedback box at the bottom of the recipe. And if you want us to keep doing these videos and keep them free, we'd really appreciate any help that you could offer in our donation section. Our goal is obviously to release content that's very interesting, very creative, and free for people to try so they can get into classical music or food or just experiment with the knowledge that they already have. So any help that you can offer is greatly appreciated. So with that, I will leave you to eat and enjoy the music, and we hope that you'll join us for future pairings. Thank you.